But yeah, let's watch this one that, again, I really wanted to watch since I love epic history. I guess they've got a new series starting, The Rise of China, and this is The Last of the King. Okay. So it's like very modern history, I guess, like, 1900 and all that. I actually, I used to like listen to a podcast about like China history 2-3 years ago. Like it was just before I moved here, and even when I was like driving 20 hours from the south of France to here, I was listening to it. But it was like from like the early history of China to, I don't know, like modern time, but I never actually finished it or anything. Simply because it wasn't the most entertaining podcast. Like it was very like broad history of China, and so it was every single time the same thing. Like new kings come, new emperor come. He comes a lot in his concubine, so there's a lot of sons. Then when he dies, the sons fight, and that's about it. Like one emperor is good, one emperor kills everybody and is insane, and then everybody fights and repeats every single time. So I felt like it's not that the history isn't interesting, it's I guess the way the podcast was presenting it. Like it felt constantly the same thing. So maybe like in video format it would be more interesting. But again, I guess this is like more recent China history, so let's learn about it. The Rise of China, Last of the King. 1910. All of creation will celebrate, all of mankind will be filled with happiness as long as the king rules. National anthem. Okay. Middle Kingdom.
China, a cradle of world civilization. The land that invented printing, paper, and gunpowder.
Sorry to pause early. I've been playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is in like 14.5 in Bohemia, Czech Republic. And in that game, they start using like early muskets, and we see gunpowder from China, right? Or at least, like somewhat learned and invented from China, which is pretty cool. Like the early musket or handgun, I guess, as they call them, were pretty interesting.
And under successive dynasties, the center of a vast empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Himalayas, and from the eastern steppe to the tropical South China Sea. The Chinese call it Zhonggua, the central state or middle kingdom.
Okay.
And for more than 2,000 years, its emperors claimed a divine mandate to rule over Tianxia, all under heaven. Since 1644, this great empire has been ruled by the Qing dynasty.
Oh, Qing, okay.
They are ethnic Manchu from the north, though most of their subjects are Han Chinese. By the 19th century, the empire spans 14.5 million square kilometers and receives tribute from many smaller neighbors. Around 450 million people live within these borders, 1/3 of the world's population. It is also estimated that China accounts for 1/3 of the world's wealth.
That much?
The imperial capital, Peking, and major hubs such as Nanking and Canton are among the greatest cities in the world.
Yeah, Nanking
is
is
a multi-ethnic
unfortunately known for
whose
the rape of
self-proclaimed
Nanking.
aim is not economic or political expansion, but the maintenance of harmony. A worldview that derives from Confucius, a sage of the 6th century BC. His teachings have governed society in both public and private realms for 2,000 years.
People using for memes.
Fundamental values, such as reverence for parents and ancestors, loyalty and benevolence, seek to create an orderly and harmonious society.
Sounds good on paper.
It is also one that is rigidly conservative. Young men from well-to-do families spend years studying the Confucian classics in preparation for the Imperial Civil Service exam. This is the only route to the higher levels of the Qing administration. But governed by scholarly bureaucrats and an emperor who is both revered and feared, China is failing to keep up with a rapidly changing world. For the time being, foreign merchants are restricted to the southern port of Canton. Such splendid isolation will prove impossible to sustain.
Really? I always thought China was like a pretty self-sufficient country, like they have so much land. So you always think like, they can just live on their own, but maybe not. We have only one thing to learn from the barbarians, and that is strong ships and effective guns. Tang Guifan, Qing Dynasty Scholar, 1861. Century of Humiliation.
1839 marks the beginning of China's Century of Humiliation. For years, British merchants had been smuggling opium from India into China, a vastly lucrative trade.
Damn.
The consequences for China are an addiction epidemic. But when Qing officials seize and destroy large quantities of the drug in Canton, the British react with force.
Really?
Using superior naval technology, the British quickly overpower the antiquated
That's what it is. I guess I've heard about the Opium War, but I didn't know anything about it.
Chinese fleet. The Chinese are forced to sign the Treaty of Nanking, the first of what will later be called the Unequal Treaties. The treaty grants special rights to the British, opening 5 ports to British merchants and ceding the territory of Hong Kong.
Really?
A second Opium War soon extends similar advantages to France and the USA.
Okay.
The Russian...
Wait, what's opium again? Like, is it like just a different name for a drug we know? What's opium? What drug is opium? Opium is the dried latex obtained from the seed capsule of the opium poppy papaver somniferatum. So I guess it's its own thing. Okay. Like, opium isn't a thing today, is it? I think they're saying it's like in morphine and stuff like that, so I guess it's like a painkiller, yeah. Fair enough.
Empire further exploits Chinese weakness to seize territory in the northeast. While a horrifying civil war, the Taiping Rebellion, devastates South and Central China for 14 years. The death toll is estimated at 40 million, making it one of the bloodiest conflicts in history. While China suffers, her enemies grow stronger.
Just one of the many in China.
In 1895, a newly modernized Japan, long seen as inferior to China, easily defeats the Qing Navy and wins territorial concessions of its own. Westerners mock China as the sick man of Asia.
I've heard that, yeah.
A giant fallen prey to the imperialism of foreign powers, better adapted.
Manchu likely don't want to modernize the army. From a different video I watched, the Qing originally were fast adopters of firearm and knew it'd make their cavalry weaker against the Han majority.
To life in the modern world. But by the turn of the 20th century, there is a growing sense of outrage among the Chinese people.
Yeah.
And a determination to fight back.
Let's go. I guess the story that I know the most from China is like the more recent, like mostly from the Indian Idol stuff from the World War II series. So like the like Manchuria and all that, the stuff with Chiang Kai-shek and the relationship with the US. So like around the 1940s onward is where I know more or less what happens. But I guess up to that point I don't know too much. I know China was also like part of World War I, but not really fighting, mostly sending workers. Yeah. Reform and be strengthened, guard the old and die. Kong Yue, Qing Dynasty reformer. That's a pretty good thing to say. Guard the old and die. Last of the Qing.
In 1899, a movement emerges in northern China, calling itself the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists. Its members become better known as the Boxers.
Oh. The Boxer Rebellion, I think
They
I've
are
done that before.
outraged by the weakness of the Qing dynasty, the spread of Christianity, and China's repeated humiliations. Their goal? To expel all foreigners from China and end the shameful concessions made to them. The Boxers begin by attacking Western-funded railways, Christian missionaries, and Chinese converts.
Damn.
In June 1900, thousands of Boxers enter Peking and lay siege to the area in the city where foreigners live. They adopt the slogan, "Uphold the Qing, destroy foreigners."
And obviously it's easy to say that, you know, like what should have happened is like definitely beat the, you know, colonization that happened and all that. But then don't be that extreme, right? Like just try to make it more like we are open to foreigners, but this is our land, so don't take it over. Should have been more like that. But I guess, yeah, the humiliations led the Boxer to be extreme, I guess.
For the ruling Empress Dowager Cixi, the Boxers are a problem, but also an opportunity.
An opportunity.
Cixi decides to throw the weight of the Qing state behind the Boxers and declares war on the foreign powers. It is a terrible miscalculation.
Okay.
In response, a 20,000-strong Allied expeditionary force, combining troops from 8 different nations, descends on Peking.
Alright.
Amidst numerous atrocities, the Boxers are crushed, and the city is looted by the Allied armies.
With only 20,000 troops?
The Qing court is forced to sign the Boxer Protocol.
You'd think China could muster like an army of hundreds of thousands.
Under its terms, China must pay crippling indemnities over 4 decades, almost twice the government's annual revenue.
122 billion.
This is China's greatest humiliation yet. Under huge pressure to modernize the state, Cixi and the Qing court finally undertake sweeping reforms. The archaic civil service exam is abolished, to be replaced by modern schools with a Western curriculum.
So they went the opposite direction.
The first steps are taken to create a constitution, which will
rejecting the
impose
Western
limits
stuff
on the
to
power of the emperor.
accepting it.
The military is reorganized along Western lines, with improved officer training, equipment, and weaponry. Its most powerful contingent is the Beiyang Army, based in northern China, under General Yuan Shikai.
Okay.
But many believe the Qing reforms do not go far enough, and that only wholesale revolution can save China. One such would-be revolutionary, Sun Yat-sen. From a humble Cantonese family, Sun was educated outside China, in Hawaii. He is very different from China's old Confucian elite. A Christian convert, Sun speaks fluent English, but struggles with classical Chinese.
Okay.
Following his involvement in several failed uprisings against the Qing, he lives in exile in Europe. In 1905, Sun travels to Japan. In Tokyo, he founds the Tongmenghui, a revolutionary alliance whose goal is to overthrow Manchu rule and replace the Qing monarchy with a democratic republic. He advocates the 3 principles of nationalism, democracy, and the people's livelihood.
Sounds all pretty
To
good.
his supporters, Sun Yat-sen represents hope in a new future. And that future seems to be drawing closer. In
If only it would be that
1908,
easy.
after a turbulent 47-year reign, Empress Dowager Cixi dies at the age of 72. The imperial throne of China falls to a 2-year-old infant, Pu Yi.
I've heard the name.
At a time of crisis and mounting opposition, the Qing dynasty has never been weaker.
I mean, it will be my object to help my 400 million countrymen and to endeavor to make the blessing of the Republic a reality. Sun Yat-sen. The 1911 Revolution.
The 9th of October, 1911, Hankou, Hubei Province. Members of a secret revolutionary society with links to the Tongmanhui are making bombs when there's an explosion.
Did someone mess up?
Their cover blown. The authorities arrest and later execute several of the group's leaders. But it only pours fuel on the fire. An uprising breaks out in the neighboring city of Wuchang. Crucially, soldiers of Hubei province's new army are persuaded to mutiny and join the revolt. After 24 hours of fierce fighting, claiming hundreds of lives, Wuchang falls to the revolutionaries. On the 12th of October, a new military government claims authority in the province.
Things are moving fast.
It publicly denounces the crimes of the Qing dynasty and calls on other provinces to join it in overthrowing the monarchy.
Jackie Chan movie.
The revolution spreads like wildfire, mostly in cities and towns where there is deep-seated resentment against Qing rule. Within 6 weeks, 16 of China's 26 provinces have seceded.
That's fast.
In many areas, such as Shanxi, the ruling Manchu are targeted and massacred. Panic grips the Qing court in Peking.
I would think so, yeah.
General Yuan Shikai of the Beiyang army is summoned to crush the revolutionaries.
He has a lot of work to do.
China is soon in a state of open civil war between Yuan's forces in the north and the rebels in the south. In the chaos of war and revolution, both Tibet and Outer Mongolia declare their independence from China.
That's when that happens. I see.
On the 1st of January 1912, in Nanking,
It's the right timing, I guess.
the rebels proclaim the establishment of the Republic of China. Sun Yat-sen, who has just returned to China from the USA, is sworn in as its provisional president. After years of exile, fundraising and plotting, Sun has finally secured political power.
Is it gonna go well, though?
His government immediately begins work on a new democratic constitution and passes far-reaching reforms. Archaic practices are abolished, such as growing queues, the long hair that symbolizes submission to the Manchu, as well as foot binding
That is the worst thing.
kowtowing.
Man, foot binding is insane. Like, if you haven't learned about it, it's probably like one of the most fucked up practice in history. I watched a video about it once, as there's still like some old lady survivor of that, and it's such an insane thing. It was like some just insane tradition thing where like, you know, people thought like small feet made like a girl, I don't know if it's like not hotter, but like more upper or something. And so what people would often do is, especially to their kids, is that they would basically break their feet, like literally break them and scrunch them so they would fit into like insanely tiny shoe. And when I'm saying breaking, it's like breaking, like they would literally break every single toe and break the feet, and force it into the shoes so that, you know, like eventually it would heal like that. And so the image is showed is like that. Their feet would end up like this. It is insanity. I mean, it wasn't even like a form of torture for, like a prisoner or something. It was something that people did willingly to their children, hoping that, it would then make them more attractive to like some lord or something. It was just insanity. I can't even believe it's a thing. I know there's a lot of fucked up practice throughout history, but the fact that this was like not even for like torturing a prisoner or something, this was like a thing you do to like your own family is just unbelievable. It's a thing.
In the new multi-ethnic Chinese Republic, all will be equal. Its flag will have 5 colors for 5 races under one union: Han, Manchu, Mongol, Muslim, and Tibetan.
Really pageant for their kids, true, yeah. I mean, I guess it's true, though it's like it's way less painful and fucked up. But there's a lot of parents who literally let their young kids have plastic surgery when they're super young. It's a thing.
But for now, the Republic only occupies the southern half of China, and the success of the revolution remains far from certain. So, to unite China and secure the future of the Republic, Sun Yat-sen makes a shock offer to General Yuan Shikai. If he can persuade the Qing imperial family to abdicate, he can be president. Yuan accepts and informs the imperial family that only by giving up the throne can their lives and comfort be guaranteed. On the 12th of February 1912, 6-year-old Emperor Puyi abdicates. Though for now, he and his court continue to live in Peking's palace complex, the Forbidden City.
Okay.
More than 2,000 years of imperial rule in China are at an end.
And it happened so fast.
In its place, the only major republic in Asia. 3 days later, General Yuan Shikai becomes provisional president of the Republic of China. But almost immediately, the revolutionaries fall out with the new president, whose personal ambition is all too clear.
Well...
Now in opposition, Sun Yat-sen and his allies established the Kuomintang, or KMT, an evolution of the Tongmanhui. Elections are held at the end of the year, the first nationwide democratic elections ever held in China. Though only around 5% of the population are allowed to vote.
That's it.
The Kuomintang win convincingly, taking nearly half the seats in the new National Assembly. Kuomintang leader Song Jiaorun, a close ally of Sun Yat-sen, is all but guaranteed to become the next Prime Minister.
Okay.
On the 20th of March 1913, as he is boarding a train in Shanghai, he is shot twice at close range.
Well...
No conclusive evidence is ever...
Large electorate who aren't literate or educated on affairs is basically useless or worse. I see what you're saying, but also, I don't know. Like, that's just how it goes. I mean, I don't feel like it's the best reason to restrict people's ability to vote, right? Whether they're informed or not. Because no matter what, as we see today too, like, a ton of people vote with no freaking idea what they're voting for, right? It's, it's just the way it goes. Even if you give them the chance to be informed, they might not be. So, a lot of them probably couldn't be reached during the Civil War, yeah. Fair enough. But I'm sure it was like, from the way he said it, it's more that there was restriction on who could vote. That's probably what it was.
Found. But it's widely believed the assassination was carried out on President Yuan's orders. China's first democratic elections will prove to be its last. The next year, rivalry between the Kuomintang and President Yuan's government explodes once more into armed conflict. But Yuan's Beiyang army is too strong. The Kuomintang and its supporters are defeated. The party is outlawed, and Sun Yat-sen returns to exile in Japan.
For nothing.
Yuan Shikai has successfully grabbed power for himself. China is now, in effect, a military dictatorship. But the president is unable to solve any of the problems he's inherited from the Qing Empire.
Well,
he dies of natural causes just 3 years later. And China slides back into chaos.
man, everything has been chaos already. I very much look forward to the destruction of the old universe, because from its demise will come a new one, and will it not be better than the old? Mao Zedong. 1917. New culture movement.
The 1911 revolution failed to establish a stable republic in China, but it does open the way for an avalanche of radical new ideas. Across China, young intellectuals are increasingly convinced that only a total break with China's past can secure its future. Their ideas crystallize in the New Culture movement. Chun Du-Xiu is one of its most prominent leaders. From a wealthy family, Chun had been immersed in classical Chinese teaching from a young age, but later turned his back on Confucian thought. In 1915, he founded the magazine New Youth, which became home to the most important radical writers in China. As a young professor at Peking University, Chun gathered like-minded intellectuals around him, such as Hu Shi, who calls for traditional Chinese characters to be replaced by Baihua, which better represents spoken Chinese. Among their students, a young man from rural Hunan province, named Mao Zedong.
Seems like an important guy.
Chun Du-Xiu and the New Culture movement argue for a complete rejection of Confucianism. In its place, they want democracy, science, Chinese nationalism, and radical social change, including female emancipation and greater gender equality.
It really seems like, you know, they're really trying to rush like stuff that took like other countries like 200 years or something to sounds like the French Revolution. It really sounds like, yeah, like they're, you know, it's like such a sudden shift over the few decades there. Like they're trying to basically like almost force the progress that happens over like 200 years in other countries, which I guess is why it ended up being such a mess, right? I mean, it's just way too much, way too fast, even though I get it, and it's some good goals. Yeah, I guess it just wasn't going to go down super easily.
They will soon have their chance to take these ideas to the nation. In 1919, World War I's victorious powers are meeting in Paris to agree the post-war settlement. During the war, China had sided with the Allies and sent 140,000 men to serve as laborers on the Western Front. In recognition of this contribution, the Chinese expected to regain control of Germany's territory.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was stupid. So they helped during the war, and the Allied power gave this area to Japan. Yeah, so the Chinese were pretty mad.
In Shandong. But now, news arrives that this colony has instead been awarded to Japan.
What a terrible idea.
The response in China is outrage. On the 4th of May, 3,000 angry students take to the streets of Peking. They gather at Tiananmen, the entrance gate to the Forbidden City. Inspired by the New Culture movement, their placards in Chinese, English, and French call for Mr. Democracy and Mr. Science. Protests spread across the country, uniting students and workers against the government and the Western powers, who are seen to have betrayed China yet again.
Well, yeah.
The protests achieve little in the short term, but will come to be seen as a watershed in China's march towards a modern, nationalist future.
It's been done before, but I think it worked out better for Japan. But I guess Japan is probably like the craziest example. I forget I saw a quote once of like Japan basically like, you know, modernized within like 20, 30 years. They basically completely changed and modernized to the extent to be able to resist the other world powers. But then obviously it also led to, the madness of Japan in World War II, right? So while it kind of worked out, it also kind of didn't, because again, things went mad with World War II.
Many protesters are now disillusioned with Western liberal democracies. Some turn to Marxism, inspired by the success of the 1917 revolution in Russia, which seems to offer a model for total national transformation.
If only they knew what's coming in the 20s and 30s for Russia with the Holodomor, I think. Like, the amount of people dying from that. Which, obviously, I know is literally like mirrored in China with the March of Death and everything.
Among these converts, the 25-year-old Mao Zedong. He writes, "I venture to make a singular assertion. One day, the reform of the Chinese people will be more profound than that of any other people. And the society of the Chinese people will be more radiant than any other people."
Okay.
Our golden age, our age of glory and splendor, lies before us. In July 1921, the founding Congress of the Chinese Communist Party takes place in the French concession in Shanghai. There are just 13 members present who meet in secret. Disrupted by French police.
USSR, if I remember, had a pretty good time industrializing during the Great Depression, and being a new ideology had yet to have its cautionary tales played out yet. Yeah, obviously.
The group moves to a pleasure boat on South Lake. Mao Zedong is a founding member. The first General Secretary is Chun Duxiu. Despite their tiny numbers, they are determined to seize control of China's revolution.
The progress of our revolution should be divided into stages. The first stage is a period of destruction, during which military rule is installed. Sounds extreme. The warlord era. That's what it's called. I'm surprised, like, something like the Three Kingdoms is not called the warlord era,
Following the death of the dictator Yuan Shikai, China had slid back into civil war. Generals compete to control the government in Peking, while the country is torn apart by rival warlords with their own private armies. Some are little more than organized criminals in uniform. The most prominent groups are the Zhili clique, the Anhui clique, and the Fengtian clique, each named after their provincial power base.
Okay.
By 1921, Sun Yat-sen's Kuomintang has established a military government of its own in Canton. Both the Kuomintang and communists realize they can only obtain power if they first defeat the warlords.
And what do the warlords want? I mean, do they just want to hold on to their province, or do they want to conquer and also be like just the full ruler of China?
Both believe they can use the other to reach their goal. In 1923, with the Soviet Union's backing, the Chinese Communist Party allies itself with the Kuomintang in a pact known as the First United Front.
Okay.
Chinese communists are urged to join the Kuomintang, which is itself transformed with the help of Soviet advisors, funds, and arms. Soviet advisors also helped to set up a military academy on Huangpu Island. It will be run by Sun's chief military advisor, a rising star named Chiang Kai-shek. His aim is to mold the Kuomintang army into a disciplined and effective fighting force.
Obviously, I know a lot about him from, again, like him leading the, I guess, the Chinese army more or less during World War II. Yeah.
But just months later, While visiting the north to negotiate with the warlords, Sun Yat-sen falls ill. On the 12th of March 1925, he dies from cancer in Peking, aged 58. His last words: peace, struggle, save China. Sun's death leaves the Kuomintang in disarray, and China at a crossroads. The only certainty seems to be further civil war. For Sun's loyal lieutenant, however, the road ahead is clear. On hearing news of Sun Yat-sen's death, Chiang Kai-shek tells his wife, "If I control the army, I will have the power to control the country. It is my road to leadership."
Well done.
In Peking, the Forbidden City lies empty. The last emperor, Pu Yi, had been evicted by a local warlord and left to seek Japanese protection. Whoever is to lead China now will face enormous challenges.
It is really one of those things when you look at conflict like that. Like, I understand that everybody wants, they have lofty goal to help the people by taking control and making things better, or it's just that they want personal power, personal glory, and stuff like that. But when you look at what a mess this is, I mean, I feel like you just have to be kind of insane to even want to try to fix all of this. Even if you manage to get power, you've seen what happened to everybody before you. Like, grabbing power isn't like the end, holding on to it is clearly like the harder thing. It's such a mess. Everybody has like different ideas. Everybody's fighting each other. So, yeah, it's just insanity.
Fragile alliances, a fragmented country, and powerful neighbors that seek to plunge China back into an age of humiliation. Can't wait for the next episode. Great news, we already made it.
That's sure nice.
Episode 2 of The Rise of China covers the rise of Chiang Kai-shek as his Kuomintang army takes on the warlords and the communists, forcing Mao and others to undertake their legendary Long March.
Yeah, the Long March.
But once again, foreign predators wait in the wings, ready to exploit a
Japan's
divided
coming in the
China.
30s.
And if you want to watch it right now, 5 weeks before it's on YouTube, you can head over to prestige streaming service Nebula.
It is very tempting. 5 weeks for the next episode. Damn. Maybe I should have waited until all the episodes were out to watch this. Okay, well, really interesting video. As always, the level of quality from Epic History is just unrivaled, I feel. Maybe the best history channel on YouTube. And yeah, that was fun to watch. I mean, I feel like, again, I know a little bit more of the later stuff, but more toward like once Japan starts conquering China and Chiang Kai-shek, is fighting back, eventually, the US decides to help, and there's the whole thing between like Chiang Kai-shek and that one terrible like US leader that, really looks down on the Chinese army, so it's kind of a mess, the whole situation in China. And then eventually, obviously, like after World War II, the communists fully taking over, and then I guess communist China basically joining the Korean War on the side of North Korea, right, and fighting America directly. I mean, that's kind of like the period that I know a lot of. So I guess, yeah, from like mid-30 to the 50s, that's where I've got a better idea of what happens. Not in details, but like the overall picture. It's really interesting, though. It's really interesting. I mean, China is like one of those countries, right, that has like such an insane history. Like, invented so many things, advanced the world so much throughout the ages, from like, writing, paper, gunpowder, but also like it's a country that's like known for the insane amount of like conflict and war, right? Even though, every country in the world has had a ton of war and conflict. I mean, I live in Europe, we've had a ton of war and conflict, but compared to like, when you think about it, I feel like compared to China, for example, the amount of people that die every time they have a war is just on a whole different level, right? And yet, yeah, I don't really know that deeply about much of it. like a lot of people I know about the Three Kingdoms. It's kind of like the famous thing, but you know, as far as I know, there's been like tons more conflict kind of like that. That could be interesting to learn about. And as I said, like I used to listen to a podcast about the history of China, but again, everything felt very redundant in the way it was presented, as it was just going over like the big point, and so every time there was just like new emperor, new war, new conflict, you know. So I guess I like stuff like this that's a bit more that goes a bit more in depth on everything that's going on. So it doesn't feel like just skipping over a lot of time passing. But I guess it's easier to do that with modern history, where there's a lot more documentation. Yeah, great video. Super interesting. Great video, as always. Don't wait for the next episode of this, or the next one for the American Revolution. And maybe another Napoleon video if they do more of it.